All right. Hello and welcome to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. And we are live immediately following WrestleMania Night number 2, both nights in the book. And we are here to talk all about it. I'm your host, the phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. And with me is my special guest, returning from last night, Mr. Andy York. How's it going, man?
Not bad.
Man.
Enjoyed a lot of wrestling this week and a lot of wrestling next week. So
What is it, like 10 days in a row or something?
I think so.
10 days in a row of wrestling, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, we are live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. Make sure you go check us out. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well. We are at PBW Podcast. Make sure that you buy a t-shirt from us, ProWrestlingTees.com. There are some great t-shirts up there, some of them designed by this guy right here. So make sure that you buy some t-shirts, ProWrestlingTees.com/PBW Podcast there as well. The more t-shirts you buy, the more t-shirts we can put up. So we look forward to that very much. All right. I am pulling up because we are so professional here. You guys gotta, make sure that we're sharing all this, spread the word. Here we go. Got some people watching on Facebook. Got to pull that up. Make sure we read those comments as well, because we got about halfway through the stream last night and forgot about those. So we got to pull those up now. All right, guys, comment, interact with us live. We are going live reactions here from WrestleMania Night number 2. Before we get into all the action of night number 2, because I want to give some people a chance to get in here. Night number 1, man, we're 24 hours removed from it. Anything that, set into you that you had a chance to think about, that you maybe liked more than you thought you did initially or disliked? Go back to night number 1 for me.
Yeah, I actually rewatched the main event again.
Okay.
Last night when I got home, I rewatched the main event just to kind of take it all in again. Just to kind of, because we had a lot of people over last night to watch it. And so kind of watching it by yourself kind of gives you a chance to focus on it a little bit better.
Yep.
And I mean, I still think from a wrestling standpoint, Seth Rollins and Cesaro was probably the match of the night, maybe even the match of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But I still think that the main event delivered much more than I thought it was going to.
Yep.
And big props to Bianca, big props to Sasha. They tore the house down, and they were fantastic. So yeah, I really liked the main event last night, but I think I enjoyed it even more the second time watching it than the first time.
Oh, we're giving immediate reactions on here about WrestleMania. So like I said, we don't have a chance to process a whole lot. We're just kind of going with initial reactions here. I'm certainly going to go back and watch both nights and really let stuff sink in. I haven't got a chance to go back and rewatch the main event from last night, but I did go back and rewatch the Open, Drew and Bob, and that sort of thing. I liked Drew and Bob more the second time around, as I figured that I would.
Yeah.
But it still didn't do it for me. But at the same time, I liked it better.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the AJ Nakamura match a few years ago.
Yeah.
When you watched it live, it was disappointing. And I still think it is disappointing.
Sure.
From what we were expecting, but it wasn't as bad as everybody said it was.
Absolutely.
I think it was card placement, and I think it was overhyped by fans, which is, WWE wrestling fans never overhype anything.
No.
But no, I think it was delayed. The rain delay really hurt it.
Sure.
The build up to it kind of hurt it. And I think, if it was anywhere else on the card, I think it would have been better.
Yep.
But going back and watching it, I think it definitely was better than I thought it was at first.
For sure. All right. If you are just now joining us, my name is Chris Belcher. This is Andy York. This is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast live after WrestleMania. Night number 2 is in the books. We're going to talk all about it. Make sure you check out our fancy ticker here at the bottom. Follow us on all those social media sites. Make sure you're subscribing. That way you get our podcast every Monday and every Wednesday. Make sure you buy a t-shirt, ProWrestlingTees.com/PBW Podcast. All right, man. Last night we went from the Open to the close tonight. Let's start with the main event.
Okay.
We have just finished what arguably was one of the most anticipated main events in WrestleMania history. We talked about it last night. You got 3 guys who arguably should not have been in this match, let alone wrestling at all.
Right.
You have Roman Reigns, who has recovered from leukemia. You have Daniel Bryan, who was forced to retire because of concussions and lesions on his brain. He got cleared. Then you have Edge, which 10 years ago to the day, today, he had to retire as the World Heavyweight Champion. And now he is back in the main event after I guess he wrestled last year, so 9 years away. And I have to say, the main event delivered.
Yeah, it definitely did. I think we were expecting the ending, sort of. I don't think we were expecting exactly what we got, but I think we were expecting a Roman win.
Sure.
And he did look. It was like the ending made him look really dominant, but the whole match leading up to it, he took most of the abuse in the match, which was, I think, was very interesting that was the case. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it was exactly what it needed to be.
Yep.
And that was to show Edge still has it, to give Daniel Bryan one more WrestleMania moment, but then to put Roman Reigns over ultimately as this amazing heel that can now, all the baby faces on SmackDown or even in the company can come after him and try to take the title from him.
Yep.
I think that adds a lot of intrigue to it for sure.
Sure. I mean, we said it last night. This is not the time for Roman to lose the title.
Right.
He is still gaining momentum. He's still, pushing forward as the head of the table as this new heel Roman Reigns character.
Yep.
Especially the first time out in front of fans. He's not going to drop the title.
No. And I think you got to see more of his character tonight because he was actually able to play off the fans.
Yes.
Like they started a Roman sucks chant, which normally, like before COVID, when he was a face, he had to just try to ignore it, or he was like Cena and just smiled at it.
Yeah.
Tonight he was able to like play into it even more, and that added a whole lot to it. And I think Roman could be like a Walter situation in NXT UK where he could hold the title for the next WrestleMania. Probably if they're going to go through with Roman versus The Rock. If he beats The Rock, and then whoever beats Roman is now going to be a megastar right off the bat because they just beat Roman Reigns. So I think it's going to get to the point where Roman is going to be this unbeatable heel that somebody's going to come in and beat. And then once he finally turns face, I think the crowd's going to be behind him as a baby face that he should have been. That's just a powerhouse and can get the job done.
Yep. So if you're looking long term, who do you see as that heel that dethrones Roman? I know you just said if he holds the title all the way through WrestleMania next year, now we're talking a whole other year. Who do you think would be in line to do that?
I could see Keith Lee.
Yeah,
possibly. I could even see Karrion Kross from NXT coming in and doing that.
Karrion Kross and Roman Reigns would be awesome.
That would be a lot of fun to see that as well. If you wanted to, you could build up Damian Priest to get to that point. If you wanted to put the rocket on his back.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of young guys in NXT. I don't think it's going to be someone like Adam Cole or Finn Balor. But I think
I was going to say Adam Cole if you didn't go there.
I could see it. I just don't think that, which they did it with Daniel Bryan. But that was after the crowd kind of took everything over.
Sure.
But I think they would go more with a guy like Keith Lee, like Karrion Kross, like Damian Priest. Maybe even if they put him on there, maybe even someone like Bronson Reed, like somebody that's big that can be somewhat believable taking him down, which I believe Adam Cole could do it. I'm just saying that in WWE's eyes, somebody that's big enough to do that.
Checking out the comments on Facebook here. My dad. Thanks, Dad. You and I think a whole lot alike, if I haven't told you that about wrestling. Because I said this last night on the show, Bobby Lashley.
Yeah.
And Roman Reigns.
That would be fun. I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to build that to Survivor Series.
Ooh,
champion versus champion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Because it worked really well with Drew, and so I think they could do that again with Roman and
Bobby. As you can see, I'm wearing my Edge t-shirt, so I don't want to say that I'm disappointed in the main event because, as we all said last night, I think we picked Roman across the board last night. So I was not expecting Edge to win, but Edge absolutely proved that he still belongs at 47 years old. He's probably 13 years older than both of the guys in the ring.
I think so. Yeah.
Brian's his upper 30s, is that right?
Yeah.
Or mid?
I think he's like in that middle point between mid and upper 30s.
Gotcha.
Okay. Kind of between.
Regardless, Edge is at least 10 years older than both the guys in there, and he just showed that he could outwork them. Now, for all of you that are commenting and watching along, yes, I understand it's a triple threat match. Yes, the guy can take a break for a minute. I get that, whatever. But Edge showed that he can still go with the young guys and that he can tell a story, make it compelling, and no matter what he does, no matter how much he bashes the people's guy and Daniel Bryan, no matter how much he bashes Roman Reigns, and he does concertos on SmackDown, and he does all these heel promos, that crowd was 100% behind Edge tonight.
They were definitely behind Daniel Bryan, but they were 100% behind Edge too, because this was like, since the Rumble, this was his first time in front of a live audience being able to wrestle again for the first time in 10 years, I guess.
Oh man.
And so I definitely think that handled, and like the triple threat argument that you brought up, I think Daniel Bryan took more of a rest period than Edge did.
I think you're probably right.
And I think Roman was definitely more heavily involved in the match, but I think between the two of them, I think Daniel Bryan would seem to be less involved at times than Edge was.
I agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Edge's gear tonight, definitely gear of the night. I mean, I don't know what it is about wrestlers that look sharp in white gear. We'll talk about Randy Orton a little bit later.
I think it's the thing of like when a wrestler wears black for so long and then they go to white for that first time.
It's like
it's like when Seth did it at SummerSlam. Was it SummerSlam? Yeah, SummerSlam against Cena. Like him coming out in that white gear was amazing to see that.
Dad with another comment says that of course Edge could be a player too. He could still come back and challenge Roman.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a thing where Edge comes back and says, "Hey, I never did get my one-on-one match."
Yeah.
And they finally do go one-on-one.
The only thing I would say about that is he pinned both guys.
Right.
Pretty dominantly.
That's true.
Pretty dominantly. And so I think you could make that argument, but I think that if they're going to do that, they're probably going to wait a little bit and do it at SummerSlam or something like that.
Or SummerSlam is Brock Lesnar.
I honestly think Brock's going to go for Bobby.
Yeah,
because it would be. I think it's too soon to do the whole Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman versus Brock Lesnar without Paul Heyman.
Okay, so then do you get Bobby and Brock at SummerSlam and then Roman and Brock at Survivor Series?
Maybe. I don't know. I'd love to keep that title on Bobby.
I know,
for a long time, but I think if they do anything, it will probably be that with the roles reversed of Brock being the face and Roman being the heel. I think that would be interesting. That definitely added intrigue to it.
I think they can get away with keeping the title on Bobby without a crowd easier than they could with a crowd turning on him, depending on what way he goes. I mean, obviously we haven't made it to Raw tomorrow night yet, so we'll see. Depending on if he toes the line as a tweener or if he stays full-fledged heel, depending on what they do with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is a guy that could come over and challenge Roman. We've seen that.
Yeah.
But he could cross over and challenge, Roman Reigns as well.
I think Roman's going to go. I think the next few pay-per-views is probably going to be Roman versus nobody really believable to take the title off of him.
Sure.
I'm trying to think who's on SmackDown that could do that.
Who's a face on SmackDown?
I mean, you could do Roman versus Big E. That would be fun.
Now that Big E doesn't have the Intercontinental title, we'll get to that. Yeah. Actually, let's just go to that match right now. I know it's not in order, but that's a smooth transition. And you know me, I like my smooth transitions. So Big E and Roman could be very viable since Big E dropped the Intercontinental title tonight to Apollo Crews in a Nigerian drum match. We didn't see a drum get used at all in this match. That was very frustrating.
Yeah, I think the only time it was used was when Big E kind of threw Apollo into like a stack of them.
Right.
But nobody really used it. I think it was just an excuse to have a street fight without calling it like a no DQ street fight type of match.
And I brought this up while we were watching the show. I think it's because these guys have fought and fought and fought for the last 3 months, and you got to have something different.
Yeah.
So you needed a gimmick for the match.
Yeah. And I think, it was fine. It started off pretty hot, and Apollo took that nasty bump on the steel steps.
Oh man, that was nasty.
And so I think, it did. I think it was fine. It wasn't match of the night. It wasn't anything super crazy. It was good to see Big E and Apollo kind of get their moment at WrestleMania. And Apollo winning was the right move, I think. Yeah. I know Big E needs to be pushed as a singles guy, and maybe it's to push him with Roman. Yeah. I mean, maybe this Intercontinental title was just to establish him, and now you push him up with Roman. Yeah, I think he is a main eventer. Right. Oh, for sure. I think, though, that Apollo needed this win, especially with this new gimmick, to sort of solidify what he's doing, especially with the guy that debuted, what's his name? Dabba-Kato from Raw Underground. Yeah. I love that pairing. Yeah. We see that pairing across on Raw with AJ and Omos, but Apollo needs a heater like that to really solidify, to help him out,
Because let's be honest, people get tired of the mid card guys and seeing them over and over and over
Right.
when they don't really get pushed.
Yeah.
Well, here's a reason and a way to push Apollo.
Yeah, and I think it's good for him to get a character change. Maybe it's a controversial character, but I don't think necessarily a controversial character is a bad character to have. It gets people talking about you.
I mean, you got to have a controversial character or two on the show,
right?
Because as Bruce Pritchard and all the writers like to say, I mean, wrestling art imitates life.
Yeah.
So you have that kind of stuff in real life and in movies. Yeah. So you have to have it in wrestling.
And they tried it with Retribution, and that did not work because it kind of failed from the beginning.
Well, that was also really bad timing with all the riots and everything.
Well, I think he did that on purpose.
Well, I'm sure he did
because of it. Yeah. But I still think I think the gimmick works for Apollo. I think it's good for him that he's not just some athletic guy that smiles all the time now.
Right.
He has like an actual character that, people can get behind, people can be against. So I think it was the best all around for Apollo. And kind of gets him over a little bit.
And now you get into this Dabba-Kato helping him win matches, help, keep the IC title for a little while until you can get another baby face to come up. And, I don't know who that would be, but, you get somebody to come up and challenge him.
Yeah.
Again, we are live on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook. Make sure that you check us out. Make sure you comment. Make sure you interact. This is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast live. I'm Chris Belcher. This is Andy York. We've got a comment coming through on YouTube here that I want to throw up. One video game dude says, some peeps saying Edge technically won because he was covering Brian. Any thoughts?
Technically, yeah.
Technically, yes, but we pointed this out too while we were watching it. Roman drug Edge over far enough to where Edge's shoulders were on the mat as well.
Yeah.
And the reason that I bring that up is because I specifically remember a match, December 2003, heavyweight championship match between Shawn Michaels and Triple H on Monday Night Raw. Shawn hit the super kick. He laid down on top of Triple H just like that, but he rolled over far enough to where his shoulders were pinned to the mat too.
Yeah.
Counted 3, and Triple H retained due to a tie.
Yeah.
So technically, in that sense, Edge and Brian would tie. Roman was on top.
Yeah. And I think they did that a few years ago too with Becky and Sasha when they were setting up the triple threat.
Yeah.
That was at the Raw in Nashville.
I
was at that because that was the same. I remember that was the first Raw I ever went to, and that was the Raw when they were setting up Taker and Shane at Mania, and Vince came out.
Yeah,
that was the whole
that's
Raw.
right. That's right. I was there,
and I remember they set that up. They did that there, but yeah, I think it was just, I think it was just to show Roman's dominance by pinning both of these guys in the middle of the ring.
Yep.
And I think it was just to get Roman over even more, which I'm for, because if he was a forced face and nobody wanted to be for, that's one thing that they've been doing for years. But the fact that they're playing into him being a heel, doing all of this over and over and over again, it fits his character, and I think it works really well.
1,000%, as my wife likes to say. My math is terrible. 1,000%.
That's Steiner math.
That's Scott Steiner math, y'all. So let's go to Rhea Ripley and Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. This match was, I thought it was really, really good. It wasn't as good as I expected it to be. Maybe I thought too much about it or expected too much out of it. But that being said, though, I thought this match was really good. This was the redemption story to put Rhea Ripley on top, because I truly think last year at Mania it was supposed to be her moment, beating Charlotte, even though she was the NXT Women's Champion and she would have stayed on NXT. I think that was her moment. This was the redemption, and now she is the Raw Women's Champion.
Yeah, I think it was good. I mean, it was definitely, both women looked strong throughout the match. I think it looked really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I think Rhea is somebody that you could build a division around while Becky's still gone.
Sure.
And while
Absolutely.
Charlotte is not there, I think you could definitely build a division around Rhea and around Asuka. It's just my only thing is there's not a lot of women on both sides that are viable as champions.
Yep, that's right.
And they haven't really built anybody up. They'll throw like Natalya in there every once in a while, but she's not, like we saw tonight. Natty's not really done a whole lot in her career, unfortunately.
Right.
And so I don't think there's really anybody except for Asuka, Charlotte, and Becky, and whatever brand Ronda's on. If they bring Ronda back, that could do that.
You also have Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax when they're not a tag team,
right?
Right,
and I think there's a lot of interesting like matchups that are new that we could see with Rhea as champion. There's not a lot with Asuka,
right?
And so you could see Rhea versus Charlotte again. You could see Rhea versus Becky. I think it would be a lot of fun to see Rhea versus Ronda.
Yeah.
That would be that's two different styles that I think would mix really, really well together.
Yep.
And I would love to see at some point, if they both hold the titles all the way, I would love to see Rhea versus Bianca.
Oh yeah.
We've kind of seen that. We've kind of seen that, but 1-on-1, I think that would be a fantastic.
Put them at Survivor Series.
I think that would be great to see.
Watching the comments here on Facebook, Levi, we're going to get to your comment in just a minute. I will address that towards the end. So keep watching. The only word I can think of is brutal. Of course, I'm talking about the live performance, playing Rhea Ripley to the ring. The only thing I can think of is brutal. Yeah. I mean, that was bad.
Yeah,
I have to bring that up.
Her entrance was great without the music. Like, if the live music wasn't there, her entrance would have been really, really cool to see. But the music definitely took away from it.
And I don't even know who the person was. No disrespect to who performed Rhea to the ring. Apparently, she's like this musical legend who hasn't played in a long time, and so I don't know the full backstory on it. So no disrespect to that person, but there was something wonky happening. It just wasn't good.
I don't think she could hear it. I don't think she could hear
That's
herself.
True.
I think it was. I don't know if they didn't have like in-ear monitors or anything, but she couldn't hear. I don't think she could hear herself because she was off. She wasn't singing at the right time. Like, it was. I don't know. It did not work.
So Rhea Ripley, we were talking during the show about what makes. You mentioned that, Rhea is a viable champion, somebody you can build the women's division around. What makes Rhea that kind of person that you can build the women's division around? And what I said was that nobody looks, acts, talks, carries herself the way that Rhea Ripley does. And to me, that's the definition of a star, is setting yourself apart from everybody else. Do you agree with that?
Definitely. She is definitely like a mix of all the things that it takes to be a great women's wrestler, like to be a great wrestler in general. Because we were talking about last night on the podcast of like the debate between Charlotte and Sasha. And if you look at Rhea, like, she's got the capability to be up there with them, maybe even surpass them. She doesn't sell as well as Sasha, but she still sells pretty well. She's honestly almost just as athletic all around as Charlotte is. She's a big girl. She's tall.
She's intimidating.
She's intimidating. She, like, her look is different. Her look is like Ruby Riott on steroids, and it works really well.
100%.
It's who her character is, just amped up even. It's who she is, just amped up even more. And that's the best gimmicks that you can get, is like a real life person just amplified even more.
That's it.
That's why people like Daniel Bryan works so well.
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold works so well. The Rock is who The Rock is today, just like he was when he first when he came into his own. And so I think that definitely is when you're yourself, but you're amplified even more. It really comes through, and it makes you more relatable to everybody.
Comment coming through on Facebook from Peyton Ison. Wants to know if we think Becky returns tomorrow to come after Asuka for taking her title, and then Asuka Becky at Backlash. Winner faces Rhea at SummerSlam. I like that booking. I think that's a good story to tell, because that ultimately gives Rhea credibility immediately, because the biggest star of 2018, 2019 coming after her immediately. The reason I would say no to that is because we don't have fans at Raw. We're back in the Thunderdome, so I don't think they have Becky come out with no fans. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe I think she comes in maybe as a surprise entrant in the Women's Money in the Bank and wins it.
There you go.
I could see her carrying around that briefcase. Her with that briefcase with the man gimmick would be a lot of fun to watch.
Right.
And so I think that would be really cool to see her do that. Plus, like, the prospect of her versus Rhea or her versus Bianca. Would be really fun to see that. And so I think that makes more sense. I think if she wasn't going to show up tonight, she's probably going to show up at Money in the Bank to kind of go in. Maybe Not like Brock Lesnar did to show up at the end of the match and come in, but maybe somebody gets taken out at the beginning.
And then they put her
she,
in.
Yeah, kind of like she did at the Rumble
Got it.
she won it.
Yeah. Levi with an insightful comment saying that Riya is simply a dominating presence in stature like Charlotte, which is true, which gives her automatic respect. Absolutely. Dad throwing in his Charlotte fandom, saying that he thinks they're setting up Charlotte and Riya part 2.
I could see that.
100% can see that too.
And that makes me a little nervous because normally that means Charlotte's probably going to win. She hasn't had the title in a long time.
She hasn't, you're right, but something just makes, and this is
they
not
want her to beat her dad's record.
This is not me like downplaying Charlotte or anything, but I do think that Riya gets a long title reign here. So I think if they do bring Charlotte in, I think it's to put Riya over even more.
I hope so, and I think that would be the case. But my only concern is we thought the same thing last year at Mania with both Riya and with Shayna, and neither one of those happened.
That's true. Yeah, that Shayna match is still a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the match that I took a bathroom break during, so you can really coach me through this one. Sheamus and Riddle apparently was just this hard-hitting, brutal craziness. I came back in for the finish and got to see one of the most insane bro kicks I've ever seen. And it looked like that Sheamus, when he got him, he got him. And it was almost like, okay, well, you deserve that.
Oh, man. I think it might be the main event was really good. It might be my favorite match of the night.
Really?
It might be because I was not expecting it to be good. I was expecting it to kind of be like the Braun and Shane match.
Okay. Yeah.
Of like it, because Braun versus Shane was okay. Like it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was just okay.
Right.
But this like Sheamus is a stiff worker and Riddle is a stiff worker.
Yep.
Both of them work extremely stiff. And it reminded me of a New Japan match of like a super strong style stiff. I'm going to hit you the hardest. You're going to hit me the hardest. And we're both just going to look like we went to an absolute war at the end of the match. And that bro kick at the end is up there for me with like the RKO against Seth, like the RKO that Randy hit on Seth for like one of my favorite finishers to a Mania match that I can remember in recent history.
Yeah.
Like it was brutal. It was convincing. It was out of nowhere. Like it was everything that you wanted it to be. And I'm glad for Sheamus. Sheamus is one of those guys that, when he first started, everybody hated him, and you kind of got why. Like you kind of realize, you kind of understand why. But now he's one of my favorites currently because he's so dependable and he's so good, and he can put on a great match with Drew. He can put on a great match with Riddle. Like he can make one of the greatest tag teams of all time with Cesaro. Like he's just a really great guy, and so for him to get this win and a fantastic match is really cool to see.
Well, I also think you brought up Drew. That's a good point. I think his series of matches with Drew since the Royal Rumble has really solidified him into winning this title, and it makes sense for him to do that. Now, again, the U.S. title, Intercontinental title, tag team title, we know that traditionally those get defended on the show after Mania.
Yep.
You typically will get a rematch. Something like that. So who knows how long that Apollo keeps the Intercontinental title or Sheamus keeps the U.S. title or, what have you. Mm-hmm. But I think Sheamus is, I mean, you just said it. He's a legit champion.
Yep.
He can legit go in and face a lot of the mid-card guys. Like I want to see, even though he's a tag team champion now, I would like to see Sheamus and AJ Styles feud. Because I think AJ could sell really well and just make Sheamus look even more brutal.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that match yet either, have we?
Probably maybe a one-off here and there, but nothing nothing with any length of time or anything.
Before Miz cashed in and before Lashley became champion, I really wanted to see Drew versus Sheamus for the title at Mania. I would have loved to see that.
I thought that's where we were going. To me, that made the most sense.
Because you can make it like a no DQ match. You can make it a gimmick match and just let the two of them go out there. Like kind of like what they did on Raw a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And let them go out there and just beat the crap out of each other for 15, 20 minutes and make a really good match out of it. But I was thoroughly surprised, and I think that got the most reaction out of that match got the most reaction out of me. Well, most positive reaction out of me. The entire night. Probably not. It wasn't as much as Seth and Cesaro did, but it still got a lot of great reaction. Especially, we haven't talked about this yet, but the Spanish Fly that Riddle hit on Sheamus.
Yep.
And when they kind of rotated, Sheamus, I don't know if it was Riddle that over-rotated or if they both did, but Sheamus landed right on his hip. And from that point on, he was limping a little bit before, but from that point on, you could tell he was in pain.
Yep.
And then from that point on is when it got really stiff. I think he was kind of giving some receipts to Riddle, and then Riddle was giving him right back.
Well, yeah,
it was
that's
fun like that. It was a fun match like that.
That's the comment that Levi just threw up for us. Riddle hurt Sheamus's hip, so Sheamus kicked him in the face.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was.
So there's a good chance that that's exactly
I'm pretty sure
what
he
happened.
kneed him in the face. Like he hit
the bro whatever
the thing that Kenny Omega hits, the V trigger kind
V-trigger,
of thing.
yeah.
He kind of hit that on him, and I mean he rocked his world for a second.
Right. So really solid match. Who knows what's going to happen coming out? You never know. Like I said, with those mid-card titles. Let's move on to the match of the best friends. What I thought was going to be match of the night. I'm a mark for the main event, though. I'm just going to go with the main event for my match of the night. But Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn was really, really good. I mean, the involvement of Logan Paul was...
It was minimal.
It was what it needed to be. He took a stunner. That's fine. But I thought the match was really good. Man, Kevin Owens took a lot of bumps on the neck, upper back head area.
Yeah, and I feel like that's always the case when these two go against each other. I forget who said it while we were here tonight, but it's like you can do this type of stuff when you're in the ring with your best friend.
Yep.
Like you can just beat the crap out of each other.
100%.
Hit all these, like hit a brain buster on the apron and hit a Michinoku driver that was the stiffest Michinoku driver I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
And then Kevin Owens hit him with that, I don't remember what he calls it, but that like inverted suplex.
Yeah, where
knee.
he sort of like a suplex
Brain
package
buster
pile
on his-
driver
yeah.
combo kind of thing. Yeah.
Which he went for the package pile driver at one point.
Right.
And I would have marked that if he hit that.
That would have been cool.
But yeah, it was stiff. It wasn't, I thought it was too short. I thought the match may have been a little too short. And I think we talked about they may have cut some matches may have ran a little long.
Or due to the weather.
Yeah. But I think that match, you could have given that match probably 5. You could have taken 5 minutes off the women's tag match and give it to Kevin and Sami. I think it would have added a little more to it.
Sure. Well, you could have taken 15 minutes off the women's tag match and it would have been much better. Levi commented and said that KO and Sami was really the only match worth watching tonight. I don't know that I would agree that it was the only match worth watching, but it definitely was really, really good. It lived up to the hype. The only thing that didn't happen in that match is we didn't see Kevin Owens jump off the pirate ship.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, it was a little disappointing, but he gave a stunner to Logan Paul, so that kind of made up for it. And he kind of, instead of jumping off and hurting himself, he just let Sami drop him on his neck 15 times in the match and kind of made up for it that way.
That's true. It definitely does even out. Dad threw up some comments and said maybe Sheamus versus Cesaro now. You can always go back to that, or Kevin Owens and Sheamus. That
would be fun.
Is very interesting.
That would be fun.
I like that.
I think it would be nice to see. Because we don't know where he's been, but there was a little feud between Sheamus and Keith Lee for a little while.
Yeah,
you could pick that. You could pick that back up for the U.S. title. Put it on Keith Lee if you wanted to. And then let him kind of run with it as like a test run before you put him up against maybe Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship, because that'd be a lot of fun to watch that.
I like that for sure. If you are just now tuning in, we are live recapping night number 2 of WrestleMania. This is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I'm Chris Belcher. This is my special guest, Andy York. We are going to be here covering, we got a couple matches left. We're taking your comments on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. Make sure you throw us some love. Anything you want to talk about, just drop us a comment and we will bring it up. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at PBW Podcast as well. All right. Natalya and Tamina going up against Shayna and Nia for the women's tag team championship. I'm sorry. I just mentioned this match was about 15 minutes too long. And you mentioned earlier that Natty seems to always be in the spot of putting people over.
Yeah.
We kind of briefly touched on this with the people that were watching it with us. When does this run of Shayna and Nia end? And who is viable that you could put together as a regular tag team that are two people that normally tag, or you just throw people together like they seem to do? Who's going to stop them?
Honestly, I don't think it matters. But I don't think
that was
think
my
it matters
next
to them.
question: is does it matter?
Because like with the women's title, it hasn't mattered since the Iconics won it after Mania 2 years ago. 2 years ago, yeah.
35.
It really hasn't mattered since then because you haven't really done anything with it. It would have been. I know the NXT has their own women's championships now, tag team championships now,
Right.
but it'd been really cool if like, maybe after they win it, like after they retain tonight, show up on Raw. Maybe Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart just to show up and
Just to
win the
challenge
title
them.
and then take it back down to NXT and let NXT run with it for a little while and take those titles off of Raw and SmackDown for a little while.
Yeah.
I think that would be great, but I don't think it really matters. I think would be really cool is if you got like the Iconics back together, let them win. I really think I don't know why the Riot Squad hasn't won it yet.
I was just getting ready to say I really wish they would have won that match last night and you could run with the Riot Squad
because they're both really talented.
Yep.
Ruby's really good on the mic. Like Ruby is really good on the mic. She's got, like we were talking about a little earlier, she looks like Rhea Ripley. She's got like a different look about her. So she would be really good, to kind of give those titles and let them run with it for a little bit.
Right.
I think that would be fine. But if it's not them and if it's not an Iconics return, then maybe the Bella Twins at SummerSlam.
Yeah,
maybe
I would be afraid of Nia Jax breaking Nikki Bella's neck.
Yeah, maybe Trish and Lita show up and challenge for it.
Yeah.
Or
okay.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know where to go with this. Because basically we showcased all the women's tag teams last night on night number 1. So I don't know who's left, to be honest with you. But I'm sure WWE will come up with something. That's their job. Let's go, man, to the open of the show. The Fiend versus Randy Orton. Number 1, we talked about white gear earlier. Randy Orton sporting some white gear. That was really cool. My reaction to the end of this match, my jaw literally was on the floor for a good 2 minutes. I don't know what to make of what happened. We floated around so many theories, and we'll share a couple of them right here.
Yeah.
I just what just happened?
Yeah. Because I was on my way over to your house to watch it. I was a little late, and I was watching it like on the ride over. And I looked down, like I was at a red light, and I looked down and saw, I saw like Alexa Bliss with the black stuff falling on her face and the red eyes or whatever she had, and was looking at Bray Wyatt. And all of a sudden, the next thing I know is when I'm driving, I hear the ring go, and I look, and Randy's won.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like it's a different booking decision, obviously, than what I would have made. And I'm obviously the pro booker here. No, but I don't know. Like if Bray has full control of his character and he has this vision that they're going to let him tell on TV the way that he wants to tell it, then I'm all for it. Because he has been extremely creative with this character.
Yep.
This has been one of my favorite characters that I can remember in a long time, just because of how out there he is and how creative they've let him be. And he's not been perfect, obviously, with the whole Seth Rollins feud that was a disaster in a lot of ways, and the Goldberg match was a disaster. But then he does stuff with like Cena that was fantastic, and he does stuff with Randy that's been really good. That's been really crazy.
I mean, let me just say this is we talked about on last week's podcast about how Roman Reigns in this storyline with him and Edge and Daniel Bryan and all this has easily been the best thing on SmackDown, has been the forefront of the SmackDown brand. And I'll turn it over to Raw. And I think this Randy Orton, Alexa Bliss Fiend deal, even when the Fiend was out after he got burned alive, Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss took this story to new levels, and it has been the best thing on Monday Night Raw. And now, the way that they left us here at Mania, like, okay, the question is, did Alexa turn on the Fiend? Does Alexa just now have power over the Fiend?
Right.
Did Alexa turn on the Fiend? Is she joining Randy Orton? What part does he play in all this? Is Alexa now Sister Abigail? Is this her permanent look with the black and all this other stuff? Like, there are now so many more unanswered questions. To me, the Fiend losing has no merit in what just happened. To me, it's all about the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it honestly depends on how he's booked from this point on.
Sure.
Because if he's booked to just be a guy that just lost because he was distracted, and that's kind of the end of the story or whatever it is, then that definitely leaves like a sour taste in the mouth.
Sure.
I honestly think it might be a combination of a lot of the stuff you just said.
Yeah.
I think it could be Alexa Bliss as maybe like Sister Abigail has possessed her or whatever. I also think it could be Alexa Bliss playing the Fiend to maybe get what she wants at some point down the line. Maybe she's the one that challenges Rhea Ripley and uses the Fiend to kind of win the title or do something like that.
Okay.
We float around the idea that maybe she is working with Aleister Black now. Like there's a lot of areas that you could go in. It all just depends on, and I'm fine with them taking risky moves. Like risky moves makes wrestling fun.
Yep.
It's just the payoff needs to be there. Like the payoff has to be there at some point. Otherwise, you just kind of made him lose for no reason at WrestleMania.
Yeah. Levi just commented and said, terrible ending for the Fiend. No idea what's going on. And again, to me, this is not the end of the Fiend.
Yeah.
To me, this is the beginning of something deeper.
Yeah.
Because we have talked since the Fiend debuted at SummerSlam 2019. I guess that was in-ring debut. He debuted a couple weeks before that. But we have talked about how he's not a guy that needs to be on television every week.
Right.
So by furthering this story, you do not have to have him wrestle Randy Orton. You do not have to have him wrestle anybody. All you have to do is some vignettes. You have Alexa show up one week. You have the Fiend show up one week. Again, they may still be in cahoots.
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is night number 1 of WrestleMania started out with a shocker with Bob beating Drew, retaining the title. Night number 2 started out with even bigger shocker.
Yeah.
I don't have any words for it. It blew my mind. It really did.
I think we're gonna go. I think you're right. We don't need to see I think we only need to see the Fiend, honestly, wrestle 4 to 5 times a year.
100%. Yep.
Maybe show up on Raw 2 or 3 times to kind of like the go home show.
Yep.
To kind of get that big fight feel or whatever before the fight. But you could bring back the Funhouse of Bray Wyatt. Like you could bring back Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, because we haven't seen
Bray in a long time.
That's it.
And so I think it worked. I think it's going to be fine. Hopefully, my only concern is the history of Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania has been more negative than positive.
Yep.
You had the whole debacle with Cena.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, in a lot of ways, you had the debacle with the Undertaker at WrestleMania 31.
That's true.
It would have been amazing for Taker to beat Lesnar at 30, and then and Bray Wyatt to beat Taker at 31, to be that guy that gets that big win that his character really needed at the time.
Right.
And then 32, he gets embarrassed by The Rock, which is, I know it's The Rock, but still, it was it kind of took away from him a little bit.
I get it.
And then I don't think he was on the show for 33.
Yeah, he wrestled Randy. That's when they did all the crazy projections.
That's when he was champion.
Yeah.
And then that didn't really work out that well.
Right.
34 is the one that he didn't wrestle in, or if he did, that's the one that he showed up at the Andre the Morning, to help Matt Hardy. 35 he was a no-show. Right. And then 36 with Cena. That's been his best one, for sure. So that's my only concern, is this has been a trend with Bray Wyatt over the last 7 years now, and it's been very frustrating because his character has been one of the more intriguing parts when done right.
Yep.
And so my biggest hope is that they let him kind of do the creative side of it, kind of let him tell this vision, the story that he wants to tell, that's going to add more depth to the character of the Fiend.
Yep.
And then kind of go from there. I really hope, like with the mask that he wore tonight.
Yep.
Which, if you can't tell by my shirt, I'm a big comic book fan. It definitely resembled a comic called The Killing Joke with the Joker's face on it, where he the Joker cut his face off, turned it inside out, and wore it.
Oh wow!
And he had like that really long smile too that he kind of had tonight, and so it kind of reminded me of that. So if he becomes like a Joker-like character and Alexa Bliss becomes his Harley Quinn, I think that would be really cool to see that. It has to end with something.
Sure. It definitely is the start of something. We don't know what, but I am definitely invested.
Yeah.
I'm definitely intrigued. One thing we haven't talked about on night number 1 or night number 2 is WrestleMania entrances. And that's always a big thing. And the Fiend, by far, got one of, if not the best WrestleMania entrances of all time.
Yeah,
I mean, the way that it was all set up, and then he transformed into the regular Fiend, not the burned alive Fiend. Not sure how do you feel about regular Fiend? Did you want to see crispy Fiend? Like,
I didn't want to see crispy Fiend. I think it was fine for the moment, but I think for WrestleMania, him kind of coming back as like a brand new character. But honestly, I think if he was going to lose, I think Crispy Fiend would have been better for him to lose as than the new Fiend that just came back automatically loses on his first night that he showed up. But I mean, for how he looked, I loved it. Like he looked fantastic.
And then he comes out of the Jack in the Box. That was really, really cool. The way they did that
off the top.
Man, that was so cool. Oh my gosh. So that really covers it for night number 2. And we gone through the whole card. We didn't mention the Bailey thing where she came out with Titus and Hogan and the Bella twins. And that was kind of the spot where we thought we might see Becky Lynch, but it didn't happen. I figured that we wouldn't see Becky Lynch just because, they had hyped it up so much and, what have you. So as we sort of wrap up here night number 2, Levi, I know you're watching. You left the comment earlier that night number 1 was far better than night number 2. As we wind down here, again, if you're just joining us, this is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast Live. Make sure you are commenting as you're watching. That way we can interact with you on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. We'll make sure to read those comments and give you our thoughts as we wind down here. Night number 1 or night number 2? I know that's a lot to weigh out, man. But if you had to pick, what are you going with?
Based off of raw reaction at the moment, I think night number 1 to me was better.
Yep. I agree.
Maybe like the main events, both main events are kind of at the same level for me. Both main events are really good. Both shows had really good matches.
Yep.
Night 1, you obviously had Seth and Cesaro. That was amazing match. Night number 2, you had KO and Sami. You had Riddle and Sheamus.
Yep.
But the Fiend match kind of took me out a little bit at the beginning. The women's tag match took me out even further.
Oh, jeez.
The Bailey segment kind of threw me under, took me out as well. Trying to think what else kind of took place tonight and night number. Big E and Apollo was a little disappointing.
Oscar
Rhea was a little underwhelming, but not it didn't take me out. Yeah, I was still very excited. But the first night, going back and watching it, Drew and Bobby, was a shock surprise. That was a good surprise, kind of, because Bobby with the title is not a bad decision.
Right.
The women's turmoil match was the only bad thing. Night 1.
Yep. Cesaro Rollins
was great. Braun Shane was better than it should have been.
Sure.
You had the main event that was really, really strong.
Yep.
You had the tag team match that was really good.
Bad Bunny.
You had Bad Bunny that honestly was amazing to watch. Which we got his tour reveal tonight, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I honestly think that night 1 was better than night 2, just because I think night 2 may have had overall some better matches in some ways, but it also had some things that really weighed it down for me. On paper,
night number 2 looked better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely will say. But as far, like you said, raw reactions, and I think it was the fact that I think the hype coming off of night number 1, be like, oh man, we still have another night to go. And on paper, it looks great. And night 1 over delivered,
right?
Because it was the first night in front of fans. Everybody's hyped up, and the matches that maybe we weren't looking forward to that much, maybe over delivered, kind of thing. So I think the excitement really played into that a whole lot more. I'm with you though. I'm going to stick with night number 1 as far as what was better. But I'll reserve my final decision after I go back and watch both of them. Really listen to the commentary and how, because I'm a commentary guy. Listen to how the commentary really put everybody over, that sort of thing. Even with the rain delay last night, it really still, it still really worked.
And in a weird way, I think the rain delay made it even better, because it kind of made the anticipation even better. Our anticipation for the wrestling grew even more, especially after the unscripted promos that we got. like that was better than any of the buildup that they've had.
Sure.
Building, like going towards WrestleMania.
Especially with Bobby and Drew.
Bobby and Drew,
they did that.
Kevin Owens promo, Seth Rollins promo, like
Yep.
all of the promos were really, really good. And so I was ready to go by the time that Drew and Bobby came out. I was amped. It felt like WrestleMania again. And that was one of my biggest things is like it didn't feel like WrestleMania building up to it.
Right.
Which one thing I will give WWE credit for is that it would have been really easy for them to rely very heavily on part-timers for the first WrestleMania back with fans, and they didn't. And I think that's a great thing.
They didn't. I mean, I don't consider Edge a part-timer because he's been on the shows every week. But aside from Edge,
Hogan was the only one that
if you want to consider him, and Hogan was just a host.
Right.
So they didn't have any.
Right. And that's great because it's time that you start to build new stars.
Yep.
And you saw that with guys like Cesaro.
Yep.
I know he's the star to us, but maybe not to mainstream guys like Seth Rollins. You saw Riddle and Sheamus put on a great match tonight.
Yeah.
Big E and Apollo put on a decent match tonight.
Yep.
Rhea was a star tonight. Like you're starting to build stars up. Bianca last night, like you're starting to build up stars that you desperately need.
Yep.
So that the part-timers when they come in is more of a surprise than it actually is now.
Yep.
We're expecting it now at Mania.
Yep.
And when it doesn't happen, it was like it's kind of a good feeling. Like, okay, cool. Like they relied on the talent, and the talent delivered this year.
Yep.
In crazy circumstances, they delivered this year, and I think that's really, really cool.
Dad posted us another comment on Facebook and said, "Just a spoiler: Stone Cold Jericho Broken Skull Sessions is great." I've gotten through about an hour of it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got about an hour more to go. So tune in to hear our thoughts this week on the podcast because we'll have a chance to have gone through it and we will talk about it a little bit. The first hour that I've listened to is fantastic. So I'm putting you on the spot. I'm not going to ask you what the best match was, the best moment, whatever. I'm going to put you on the spot and say, who or what stole the show between both nights? It doesn't have to be the best match.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be the biggest pop. It doesn't have to be just who or what stole the show at WrestleMania this year.
Honestly, I think I'm going to go Cesaro.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be a shock to me, but I think it's honestly a toss up between Cesaro and Bianca.
Yep.
And maybe Rhea, but I honestly think Cesaro kind of he verified everything that we already knew about him.
Yep.
And he just said, I am that good.
Yep.
Like I am that good at this pro wrestling thing. And so I think that was the biggest high for me. I think all WrestleMania weekend, the last two nights, has been Cesaro's performance and how well it's been received apparently backstage and by fans around the world.
Yep. I think Cesaro and Seth Rollins. I'll throw Seth Rollins in there as well because I don't think you couldn't have put Cesaro on. Not taking anything away from anybody else, but I'm just throwing an example. You couldn't have put Cesaro on Cesaro and Sheamus. Sorry, it's late, y'all. Cesaro and Sheamus, you could not have put that match on WrestleMania.
Right.
I don't think they would have stolen the show.
Right.
You could put it on there. It would have been brutal. It would have been hard hitting. It would have been entertaining, but I don't think it steals the show.
Right.
So hats off to Seth Rollins
Yeah.
for getting in there, being that dancing partner with Cesaro and stealing the show.
Yeah.
That being said, I agree with you. I think that stole WrestleMania. I do think, though, a close second, you got to throw Bad Bunny in there.
Yeah.
Because that match, especially for Bad Bunny to work 90% of the match and still to come out looking as good as he did, that really hats off to that guy.
Yeah, I think he might be, because we were talking about this yesterday, and I kind of forgot, between him and Pat McAfee.
Yes, Pat McAfee, for sure.
The two of them have been probably the best celebrity appearances to wrestle. To the point where, if he showed back up, I'd be totally fine with it.
Yep.
I would be fine if they put him and Damian Priest against Omos and AJ or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool to see.
I think it would be cool to see Bad Bunny, Damian Priest one-on-one.
Yeah.
I think that would be
if
cool.
Damian turned on him.
Yeah.
That could start a really big heel run for Damian Priest. Yep. I think that would be really cool too.
I think that would be awesome. All right. Man, that wraps us up. Night number 1, night number 2, WrestleMania 37, the first event for WWE with an audience is officially in the books. Raw after WrestleMania tomorrow night. We will see how that transpires. And then we have NXT on Tuesday. We've got AEW on Wednesday. We've got Impact on Thursday. And we've got SmackDown on Friday. This is the first full week of wrestling. It is just getting started. Make sure you check us out this coming Wednesday for a brand new show where we will talk about some fallout from WrestleMania, Monday Night Raw. Again, we'll talk about Austin and Jericho. And then next Monday, make sure you tune in for the first old school Monday episode of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast of this season 2. Man, anything else you want to add before we kind of sign off? I know that you have a podcast as well. Plug that, tell everybody where they can follow you and that sort of thing.
We just kind of rebranded again. I've kind of gone solo a little bit. My buddy that normally does it with me is now married and working a full-time job. And
you're about to do the same.
I'm about to do the same.
Congratulations.
I appreciate it. But yeah, you can follow us. We're now called the Shandy Show, where we're going to start covering a lot of different avenues. We're going to cover Marvel, DC, comic books, Star Wars, all that stuff. But I'm going to start dipping my toe a little bit in the wrestling game as well. I'm looking forward to that. So.
I need some competition, so you need to.
But yeah, so I'm definitely going to start diving into a lot of new things like that. The first episode is probably going to show up in about 2 weeks. We're going to be covering the entire Falcon and the Winter Soldier off of Disney Plus. So we're going to be covering that. So check out that as well. But you can follow us on Twitter. You can find us everywhere at The Shandy Show.
The Shandy Show. That's where you can find Andy York. I'm Chris Belcher. I am the host of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. You can check out my fancy little ticker down here, and that tells you where to follow us on social media. Make sure you subscribe. That way that all the new episodes come straight to your device, whether you subscribe on YouTube, whether you subscribe Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, all the things. We're everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Every Monday and Wednesday, you are going to get a brand new episode, audio and video. Make sure you check us out. Make sure you go to prowrestlingtees.com/PBW podcast. Buy a t-shirt or 2 or 4. Help us out. That is the best way to support the podcast. For Andy York, I am Chris Belcher. Thanks so much for joining us both nights of WrestleMania recap. We will catch you guys down the road.